Hey people, it's nice talking. I'd like to thank one of the people I follow doing so well for telling me about this story. So this is from sciencemag.org. Suspicions grow that nanoparticles in Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine trigger rare allergic reactions. Severe allergy-like reactions in at least 8 people received the COVID-19 vaccine produced by Pfizer and BioNTech over the past 2 weeks may be due to a compound in the packaging of the messenger RNA mRNA that forms the vaccine's main ingredient, scientists say. A similar mRNA vaccine developed by Moderna, which was authorized for emergency use in the United States on Friday, also contains the compound polyethylene glycol, PEG. PEG has never been used before in an approved vaccine, but is found in many drugs that have occasionally triggered anaphylaxis, a potentially life-threatening reaction that can cause rashes, a plummeting blood pressure, shortness of breath, and a fast heartbeat. Some allergists and immunologists believe a small number of people previously exposed to PEG may have high levels of antibodies against PEG, putting them at risk of an anaphylactic reaction to the vaccine. Others are skeptical of the link. Still, the U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases NIAID, was concerned enough to convene several meetings last week to discuss the allergic reactions with representatives of Pfizer and Moderna, independent scientists and physicians, and the Food and Drug Administration (FDA). NIAID is also setting up a study in collaboration with FDA to analyze the response to the vaccine in people with high levels of anti-PEG antibodies or have experienced severe allergic responses to drugs or vaccines before. Until we know there is truly a PEG story, we need to be very careful in talking about that as a done deal, says Alkis Togias, branch chief of allergy, asthma, and airway biology of NIAID. Pfizer too says it's actively seeking follow-up. A statement emailed to Science noted it already recommends that the appropriate medical treatment and supervision should always be readily available in case the vaccine develops anaphylaxis. Anaphylactic reactions can occur with any vaccine but are usually extremely rare, about 1 per million doses. As of 19th December, the United States had seen 6 cases of anaphylaxis among 272,000 people who received the COVID-19 vaccine, according to a recent presentation by Thomas Clark of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention (CDC). The United Kingdom has recorded 2. Because the Pfizer Moderna mRNA vaccines use a new platform, the reactions call for careful scrutiny, says Elizabeth Phillips, a drug hypersensitive researcher at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, who attended an NIAID meeting on the 16th of December. This is new. News reports about the allergic reactions have already created anxiety. Patients with severe allergies in the U.S. are getting nervous about the possibility that they may not be able to get vaccinated, at least with those two vaccines. Togias wrote in an invitation to meeting participants, allergies in general are so common in the population that this could create a resistance against the vaccines in the population, adds Janos Sibini, an immunologist at Semmelweis University in Budapest, Hungary, who has long studied hypersensitivity reactions to PEG and who also attended the 16th December gathering. Scientists who believe PEG may be the culprit stress that vaccination should continue. We need to get vaccinated, Phillips says. We need to try and curtail this pandemic. But more data are urgently needed, she said. These next couple of weeks in the US are going to be extremely important for defining what to do next. Toothpaste and shampoo. Pfizer's and Moderna's clinical trial of the vaccines, which involved tens of thousands of people, did not find serious adverse events caused by the vaccine, but both studies excluded people with a history of allergy to components of the COVID-19 vaccines. Well, that sounds like a pretty shitty test then. Pfizer also excluded those who previously had a severe adverse reaction from any vaccine. Okay, so now we see that they're trying to rig the tests. Okay, people with previous allergic reactions to food or drugs were not excluded but may have been underrepresented. The two vaccines both contain mRNA wrapped in lipid nanoparticles, LNPs, that help carry it to human cells but also act as an adjuvant, a vaccine ingredient that bolsters the immune response. The LNPs, or pegylated, are chemically attracted to PEG molecules that cover the outside of the particles and increase their stability in lifespan. PEG is also used in everyday products such as toothpaste and shampoos as thickeners, solvents, softeners, and moisture carriers, and they've been used as a laxative for decades. An increasing number of biopharmaceuticals include PEG-related compounds as well. PEGs were long thought to be biologically inert, but a growing body of evidence suggests they are not. As much as 72% of people have at least some antibodies against PEGs, according to a 2016 study led by Samuel Lai, a pharmacoengineer at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, previously as a result of exposure to cosmetics and pharmaceuticals. While 7% have a level that may be high enough to predispose them to anaphylactic reactions. Other studies have also found antibodies against PEG at lower levels. So, according to them, the 7% So that if you have a million, that could be 70,000 people potentially having anaphylactic shocks and potentially dying. But that's low or acceptable according to your pro-vaxxers. Some companies have dropped peg-lighted products from their pipeline as a result, Lai says, but he knows the safety record of many peg-lighted drugs, especially others, that concerns about anti-peg antibodies are overstated. Sabeni says the mechanism behind PEG conjugated anaphylaxis is relatively unknown because it does not involve immunoglobulin E, IgE, the antibody type that causes classical allergic reactions. That's why he prefers to call them anaphylactoid reactions. Instead, PEG triggers two other classes of antibodies, immunoglobulin MIGM and immunoglobulin G IgG, involved in a branch of this body's innate immunity called the complement system, which Sabeni has spent decades studying in a pig model he developed. In 1999, while working at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, Sabeni described a new type of drug-induced reaction he dubbed complement activation-related pseudoallergy, CARPA, a non-specific immune response to nanoparticle-based medicines, often peg-lighted, that are mistakenly recognized by the immune system as viruses. Sabeni believes CARPA explains the severe anaphylactoid reactions some peg-lighted drugs are occasionally known to cause, including cancer blockbuster Doxil. A team assembled by Bruce Solinger, a surgeon at Duke University, experienced similar issues with an experimental anticoagulant containing peg-lighted RNA. The team had to halt a phase 3 trial in 2014 after about 0.6% of 1,600 people who received the drug had severe allergic responses and one participant died. That stopped the trial, Solinger said. The team found that every participant with an anaphylaxis level had high levels of anti-PEG IgG, but some with no adverse reactions had high levels as well. Solinger adds, so it's not sufficient to just have these antibodies. At the NIAID meeting, several attendees stressed that PEG-lighted nanoparticles may cause problems through a mechanism other than CARPA. Just last month, Phillips and scientists at FDA and other institutions published a paper showing patients who suffered an anaphylactic reaction to PEG-lighted drugs did have IgE antibodies to PEG after all, suggesting those may be involved rather than IgG and IgM. Other scientists, meanwhile, are not convinced PEG is involved at all. There's a lot of exaggeration when it comes to the risk of PEG and CARPA, says Moin Mogimi, a nanomedicine researcher at Newcastle University, who suspects a more conventional mechanism is causing reactions. You are technically delivering an adjuvant at the injection site to excite the local immune system. It happens that some people get too much excitement because they have a relatively high number of local immune cells. Others note the amount of PEG in the mRNA vaccines is orders of magnitude lower than most peg-lighted drugs, and whereas these drugs are often given intravenously, the two COVID-19 vaccines are injected into the muscle, which leads to a delayed exposure and to a much lower level of PEG in the blood, where most anti-PEG antibodies are. Nevertheless, the companies were aware of the risk. In a stock market prospectus filed on 6 December 2018, Moderna acknowledged the possibility of reactions to the PEG from some lipids or PEG otherwise associated with the LNP. And in a September paper, BioNTech researchers proposed an alternative to PEG for therapeutic mRNA delivery. The pegylation of nanoparticles can also have the substantial disadvantages concerning activity and safety. Catalin Carrico, senior vice president at BioNTech, who co-invented the mRNA technology underlying both vaccines, says she discussed with Sabini whether PEG in the vaccine could be an issue. The two know each other well. Both are Hungarian, and in the 1980s, Carrico taught Sabini how to make liposomes in her lab. They both agreed that the low amount of lipid and the intramuscular administration, the risk was negligible. Carrico emphasized that based on what we know so far, the risk is still low. All vaccines carry some risk, but the benefit of the vaccine outweighs the risk. Again, here's what they have said from the scientists themselves. The vaccines do carry risk. The pro-vaxxers like to say that you're just imagining it. Sabini agrees, but says he hopes that also true in the long run. But says he hopes that's also true in the long run. He notes that both mRNA vaccines require 2 shots, and he worries anti-PEG antibodies triggered by the first shot could increase the risk of an allergic reaction to the second or 2 PEG-lighted drugs. Stay for 30 minutes. To understand the risk, Phillips says, it's crucial to unravel the mechanisms underlying the immune reactions and find out how often they are likely to occur. The known U.S. cases are currently under study, but key clues may have vanished. Anaphylactic reactions produce biomarkers that only remain in the blood for a few hours. At the NIAID meeting, participants discussed ways to ensure the blood samples of future cases are taken immediately and tested for those markers. If PEG does turn out to be the culprit, the question is, what can be done? Screening millions of people for anti-PEG antibodies before they are vaccinated is not feasible. Instead, CDC guidelines recommends not giving the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines to anyone with a history of severe allergic reaction to any component of the vaccine. If people who have had a severe reaction to another vaccine or injectable medication, the risks and benefits of vaccination should be carefully weighed, CDC says, and people who might be at high risk of anaphylactic reactions should stay at the vaccination site for 30 minutes after their shot so they can be treated if necessary. At least anaphylaxis is something that happens quickly, Philip says, so it's something that you can be very much alerted to, prepared to recognize early, and prepared to treat early. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. Please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. I'll leave the article in the description. Peace.